All right, so today we're diving deep into KCP Sugar and Industries.
KCP Sugar.
They've been around since 1941. That's a long time.
That is.
Long history. And, I'm looking through all the stuff you sent me.
Yeah.
Financials, recent developments, analyst reports, the whole 9 yards. It seems like they're a lot more than just sugar these days.
Yeah, it's not just about sugar anymore. Like you were saying, they've been making some strategic moves. And I think especially with the world focusing more on sustainability and alternative fuels, they seem to be adapting pretty well.
So, they started with sugar, obviously.
Right.
It's still a big part of their business, but they've expanded into other areas. We're talking ethanol production,
Ethanol.
power generation. They're even producing biofertilizers. What really jumped out at you from their business overview? When you first looked at all this stuff, what was the most interesting thing?
Well, the diversification is definitely a key. Especially when you look at what's happening in India with the government's focus on ethanol blending for fuel. That's a huge market.
Huge.
And it's smart for KCP to be adapting to those market shifts, tapping into these new sectors that are growing.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk money.
Okay.
Let's get into the financials. Their performance, I got to say, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. Sales growth has been pretty flat for a decade.
Yeah.
But their profits have been on the upswing, at least for the past 3 years. But then we see this dip in the second quarter of 2024.
Right. It's up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your take on all that? Especially with that recent dip.
Well, I think it really just shows how volatile the sugar industry is.
Yeah.
It's affected by everything, the monsoons, global sugar prices, things that are completely out of KCP's control. So yeah, that recent dip, it's definitely something to watch. A 27% year-on-year decline, it's not insignificant, but looking back at those 3 years of growth, that 36% increase in profits, that's encouraging, right? It kind of suggests they're making strategic choices that are paying off.
Yeah.
At least, in the long run.
Right. So it's like a balancing act.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about some of the strong points, but what about the potential pitfalls here? What should investors really be paying attention to? I know the return on equity is good, right?
Yeah. Their ROE is really strong. It's sitting at 14% right now.
14%. Okay.
Yeah, which basically means that for every 100 rupees of shareholder investment, the company is generating 14 rupees in profit.
Okay, so for someone like me who doesn't spend all day thinking about finance, why is a strong ROE so important? What does that actually tell us?
Well, it tells us they're pretty good at using their investments to make money, turning investment into profit. A high ROE, like what KCP has, it's generally a good sign for investors. It means their money is being used effectively. But of course, there are always those other factors.
I understand that.
Right. Like we talked about before, they rely heavily on sugar, even with the diversification, the fluctuating prices, the weather, all of that still plays a role. So their profitability can change pretty quickly. And they also need a lot of working capital, which means managing their cash flow carefully is essential. So there are those risk factors to keep in mind as well.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about their ethanol production. This seems like a really smart move, especially with all the focus on biofuels. How big of a deal do you think this is for their future?
It's huge. This is a global trend. It's not just happening in India.
Right.
Governments everywhere are pushing for biofuels to, lessen our dependence on fossil fuels. And it makes sense, right? It's more sustainable.
It's better for the planet.
Exactly. And for KCP, it's a fantastic way to diversify their revenue.
Yeah.
And potentially, rely less on just sugar. They're positioning themselves in a market that's only going to grow. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing their stock perform so well. That 35% CAGR over the past year, that's something.
Yeah, that's impressive. And it's not just ethanol either. They're doing biofertilizers, calcium lactate. They're even, testing the waters with sustainable energy solutions. It seems like they're really embracing the whole ESG thing, the environmental, social, and governance movement.
Absolutely. And that's smart. ESG investing is becoming more and more important. Investors are really starting to look at the impact companies have on the world, not just their profits.
Right. It's not just about the bottom line anymore.
Exactly. So for KCP, these efforts, they're not just good for the planet, they're good for business. It's a win-win. It could bring in a whole new group of investors who, really care about these values.
So it sounds like KCP is kind of at a crossroads right now.
I think so, yeah.
They've got this long history in sugar, but they're branching out into all these new areas. It's exciting, but it's also there's uncertainty there.
For sure. The big question is whether they can handle all these challenges, the market ups and downs, the need to manage their money well, while making the most of these new opportunities. It's a delicate balance.
It is. It is. So anyone looking into KCP, it's not enough to just look at what they've done in the past. You have to look at where they're going, their vision for the future. It makes you wonder, are they going to be able to pull it off? Are they going to be the next big thing, or are they taking on too much? It's a company to watch, that's for sure.
Definitely. It's a story that's still unfolding.
Absolutely.